Welcome to the Valor Fire Training Podcast. We're glad you're here because this podcast is designed for you, the fire service community, to learn about tactics, training, and culture. In each episode, we'll sit down with influential firefighters to discuss hot topics and current events. Before we dive in, remember that you can find entertaining video versions of each episode along with more on our YouTube channel. Just search Valor Fire Training, subscribe, and hit the notification button to be alerted when new content is added. And now, here's your host, Dave Mellon. Hey everyone, it's Dave Mellon with Valor Fire Training. Thanks for joining us again for another episode of our podcast. I am joined by Jeremy Sanders, who is a good friend of mine. We've known each other for a while now, and we've been trying to put this thing together for how long, Jeremy?
I don't know. I was thinking earlier when the first time we kind of started talking about it. It's been a while.
It's been a hot minute, right? So we've been trying to put this thing together for y'all for a long time. It's taken a lot of different scheduling, and we finally got it taken care of. So for those of you that don't know Jeremy, he's a 19-year veteran of the fire service. He lives in the Oklahoma City metro area, works as a captain. He's also a content creator for Crew First Culture. And he's written articles for Fire Engineering Online, and he has a bunch of stuff posted on Firehouse Vigilance as well. So thank you, Jeremy, for joining me today. I'm excited to have you. I think it's going to be a great show. Why don't you tell everybody kind of your background and how you got into the fire service and what you're all about?
Yeah, absolutely. First off, thank you very much. I've enjoyed what you're doing. You're doing some great things, and just your unique instructing and teaching style is nice to see. So I appreciate your friendship and the fun that you put into everything along with the knowledge. So that's good to see for me. As far as getting into the fire service, it's, I've kind of talked about it a few times. It's kind of an accident. I am not somebody who has lived since a child wanted to be a firefighter. My dad was a volunteer for, I don't even know. I mean, back when I was maybe in the third grade and so it wasn't something that I was, born to be or anything like that. I was 22, 23 years old and still didn't know what the heck I wanted to do. I just knew I didn't want to be doing what I was doing. I was pipeline construction out in the coldest days and the hottest days, and it sucked. And so I knew it wasn't that. Just luckily enough, I worked with a couple brothers that were firefighters in different departments. And honestly, that was 20 years ago. I can't even remember kind of what the conversations were that interested me so much, but what they talked about obviously kind of struck something with me. And I think probably the biggest thing was just the brotherhood, the team atmosphere type stories. And of course, the cool things that they got to do to help people out. I mean, it doesn't take much of that to really strike something in a lot of people. And so those things kind of started sitting with me, and they led me to apply for a couple spots that were open at the place I'm at right now. I went and applied, and for somehow got on because I had.
I think we're all in that same boat, man. We're like, we really got picked.
Experience. Yeah, I had no experience, no knowledge, no credentials, nothing. I'd not done anything, and so just kind of happened to be my time, I guess. I think we hired 2 classes out of that. There were over 900 and something people apply, and I believe there were 12 to 13 people hired. So that's ridiculous awesome odds that I am even here right now. But anyway, I think it's just, that's kind of the theme of everything about me. There's no reason for me to be where I'm at or do the things I'm doing, except that's just where I'm supposed to be. It's part of the plan that was put in place for me. And so luckily enough, I'm a part of that. That's about it, man.
Absolutely. Well, and you do a lot of stuff on leadership and mentoring, and that's what I want to talk about today with you. Right now we're in a weird spot in the fire service in general, and I just talked about this on another podcast with Dave McGlynn. We're in a spot in the fire service especially, but public safety as a whole, we're in a spot that we've never been in, right? And it's making it harder and harder for us to love the job. And so, what I found, and what the discussions that I've had, especially down in Oklahoma last week, it is harder and harder for those of us who have a passion and love the job, um, to continue loving it, because there's all these things that we're up against, right? We're up against COVID. We're up against the political atmosphere. We're up against the administration, the city leadership, the vaccine. I mean, there's so many different levels of things that we're like fighting against, on
Yeah.
top of the fact that we're working in a job that wants to kill us. And so if and when I say that, I'm not trying to be dramatic. I mean, it's not like,
Oh
oh,
yeah.
the fire's going to come and kill you. I mean, heart attacks, stroke, cancer, all
Yeah.
these other things that are associated with firefighting, and then we have to deal with a bunch of other bullshit on top of it. So I wanted to talk about leadership and mentoring with you and kind of hit some of those topics. But what is your view of leadership in the fire service? Like, what is that actually supposed to entail?
Man, for me, I've always been somebody, even kind of looking back to sports days in high school and maybe even earlier, I've always been somebody that didn't really just seek out that kind of that title, but I enjoyed being a leader, playing baseball for years and years and years. I enjoyed, especially those last years of high school, kind of being the older group, in that team, being able to for people to look up to me and that type of thing. And so that's definitely led into where I'm at right now. And I knew even early on, wanting to be at a formal leadership level before I was even there, I knew there were things that I was going to have to overcome. And like I'm a big just avoid conflict type person. Just personally, that's just where I'm at. And so I knew years ahead of time that is going to be something I'm going to have to deal with. And so just things like that, I knew that I've got to grow and get better at, even before that it comes to me. But even after, having that, the official air quote title of a formal leader, I didn't understand. And I still don't understand, but I definitely didn't understand what that meant back then. I was our first formal role as a lieutenant. You're basically a substitute teacher. No, you're filling in for captains who are station officers and things like that. And so I was a lieutenant for, I don't know, 6 years, long, long time for us. And now I've been a captain for, I think, 3.5. And it probably wasn't until maybe 2 years ago when I finally just realized, oh my gosh, there's a lot more to this. And I like to define it as a weight, man. It is a true weight that leadership is on me. And I feel like it should be on all of us. We're not just responsible for telling three or two or three people that it's okay to go in or not go in on a fire. We're not just responsible for writing the information down at medical calls and plugging it into the patient report when we're back at the station. There is just a innumerable list of things that we're responsible for, including building better people and creating an environment that we all love to come to and just enjoying what we're doing. And yeah, absolutely. What all the stuff you said leading into this, it's hard. It's very, very hard because of so many things. It's almost like there's so many things just right out of the gate that you're up against. And and I think that if I didn't have people like you, if I didn't start reaching out outside of my organization, a year and a half, 2 years ago, I would be concerned about where I would be.
Right.
I would literally be concerned with where I would be because this is what has held me on, excuse me, and kept me going in a positive direction because I cannot get everything I need from my department. I don't know that anybody can.
Right.
And so going back to your question, leadership is heavy, man. You are responsible for so many things and it goes so far beyond just the surface of you're the one that makes decisions on calls. And I take that very, very personal. And I try to really impress that upon anybody that I get to speak to because I think we all should be feeling that, even the informal leaders.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny that you bring that up. So like there's a term that I have heard multiple times in different areas, but there's t-shirt firefighters.
Yeah.
They get on the job and they just want to, post on social media that they're a firefighter and everything is about them being a firefighter and how cool it is. And they're usually the ones that every time you go somewhere, they ask if there's a firefighter discount. But, there are red hat officers too. I mean, there are people that want that helmet. They want that shield so bad, uh, and they're just chomping at the bit to get it. And then once they get into that position, they're like, oh, ooh,
Yeah.
I have to do all this stuff. And so it's funny because when I grew up in the fire service, there was a very paramilitaristic organization to what we did, and so because I grew up in Nebraska and I grew up around a city career department, I understood that. I understood, coming in, I got told to shut up several times. Because I was the kid that would walk in and be like, hey, are we going to go do this? Can we go do this? Hey, Cap, what about this? Hey, paramedic so and so, can we talk about paramedic stuff? Because I want to be a paramedic. And they're like, dude, shut up. Stop. Like, I
Yeah.
know you're excited, but you need to learn your place and you just need to kind of roll with it. And we'll tell you when you need to do stuff. And as I got to know the crews and as we got more of a relationship built, they started opening up a little bit. And so it's funny because as I've gone through my career, it's been the same way. As I got onto department, it was very much me keeping my mouth shut. Even when I knew some things, they'd be like, "Hey, Dave, do you know how to do this? You know how to run a K-12 saw? Yeah, I've run one a couple times, but why don't you show me?"
Yeah.
And so then as I got promoted, it was like, all right, here we go. I gotta, because everybody has different leadership styles. And so, like in your case, when you got promoted to captain, did you already feel like the stuff that you had brought from being a lieutenant helped you, or did you have outside influences like people chirping in your ears going, well, you need to be captain like this and you need to be a captain like this?
No, I think it was actually drastically the other direction. We do not have any kind of formal leadership slash and or officer development at all, like nothing. And so for me, yeah, I mean, I was lucky enough to work for some good ones, and honestly, I'll say I was lucky enough to work for some bad ones too.
That's a thing.
And
That is a thing.
and really, yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I gained a lot from that. Just for me, I don't know that there was a lot of just really intentional mentoring and things like that. It was just kind of osmosis passed on, and so that being the case, that's really been one of the footings of kind of the direction my message is going right now is getting some of that out there. Yeah, there are some great people outside, the if you want to call it the speaking circuit, whatever, conferences, putting some great officer development stuff out there. But the more and more you talk to people all over the nation, their particular organizations just don't have it. You have to go out to gain that. And so, me personally, and it goes back to the first question. No, I don't really think I had a clue of really what was coming and how to react upon it. Yeah, you have to have your basic certification. Sometimes some departments require that to be an officer. Mine didn't even. They do now, but when I got promoted, I didn't even really have anything that was required of me beyond what I already had as a firefighter.
Right.
And so, that kind of being said, I knew going into it that I wanted to take care of my people, and I knew if I did that, that we were going to have a pretty good footing to do whatever else. Just if I can do that, if I can take care of everybody and create a place that we'd like to come to, we're going to be in good shape. And I wanted to do our job well, but I didn't really care much about extra training. I didn't really seek out anything. I just wanted to kind of rest upon those kind of key things for myself, and I felt fairly comfortable that I was a decent officer, but I didn't know. I obviously didn't know, and I still obviously don't know. I mean, 2 and 3 years as a captain, I've got a long way to go, but it is amazing to me once I started kind of pulling the blinders off, what has changed and how I've grown just in those 2 years. I've said it several times. I guarantee you, I have grown more, learned more, and better at my job, multiples above the first 17 years, all put together.
Yeah.
And that's just because I've done the work to make it happen, and I've had great influences and great mentors to bring me to those, those areas. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
it's been a journey, but I'm excited to be on that journey instead of just being stuck where, a lot
Right.
of people are.
Well, and the thing is, I mean, the old saying of "you don't know what you don't know,"
Yeah.
it doesn't hold back from us, right? Like, there's so many times that I've gone to a class and I'm like, "Oh my god, I never thought about that," or "I never
Yeah.
thought about doing it that way." Um, but it does. It brings me to a really good point that I think it's crazy that if, in the American Fire Service, and again, there's the worldwide scale, and then there's the American Fire Service, right? And I can't compare apples to apples because they're not,
Yeah.
right? Like, there's a lot of countries that have a national fire service where it's the whole entire country and everything's run the same way, and trucks are all bought the same way, and gear is all spec the same way. But in the American Fire Service, it cracks me up that you can go to a Fire 1, Fire 2 class anywhere in this country, and they're teaching, 3-person ladder throws and 5 people on a 2.5-inch line, right? But then you go anywhere in the country and you talk about officer development or leadership, and people are like, I don't know. I don't know what we do. And it's like, wait a minute. So you're telling me
Yeah.
that on a united front across the country, we can teach really, really weird stuff, which, of course I say it's weird. Somebody may be like, oh, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. But we've unified our front on the education of the initial firefighter, but we still have Officer 1 classes where the only thing that somebody might get out of that is how to write a memo
Yeah.
and, how to avoid conflict.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, wait a minute. So what are we actually teaching our officers? And so I feel like that really does. And you bring up a great point, like in your own organization and in mine as well, there is no officer development. I mean, if you want to be a captain, you have to be there for a certain amount of, we don't have lieutenants, but if you want to be a captain, you have to be there for a certain number of years. You have to apply for it. They put you through like an inbox exercise. There is no practical scenario. It's not like you have to go up on a mock fire and take command and do command level stuff. And so really what it kind of comes down to is, can you be a follower for the administration and a leader for the crews? That's what they're more focused on, not what's going to happen when 500 gallons of ethyl methyl bad stuff catches on fire in a manufacturing plant. Are you going to be able to handle that?
Yeah.
And so it's weird, man. Like I feel like and I'm a captain myself at one department and a back end firefighter at the other, but it's weird because I feel like we've kind of gotten screwed in a lot of different ways as far as just getting thrown to the wolves. Like I had to figure out so much, and you did too. So when you talk about like leading your crews and doing your stuff the way that you do it, what are the high points? Like, what do you wake up every day to go to work and strive to do as far as leading your crews?
Step one and goal number one, whatever you want to call it, is to grow, to learn something every day. I mean, that's been something, like I said a little bit earlier, that's been a drastic turnaround for me, because literally in my expectations on day one of being a captain of my career, day one of my career, it said that, when we have training, we're going to approach it with a good attitude and be all in. But I'm not really a big training guy. I mean, it literally said, I'm kind of paraphrasing it, but that's what it said. And that's who I was. And so now to look at me now, I want to do something every day. And that's a huge culture thing for us. And I'm sure across the nation is, you don't touch weekends. Weekends
Right.
are for us. You start,
Yeah.
you
Don't you
start
dare
talking,
take up my weekend.
you start talking about training on weekends, and that's like compared to, communism or something being
Right.
preached.
Right.
And so, it's not that big of a deal. It's not, the worst. And it's funny, the worst tour that we have, we do the whole, we have the 4-day schedule. And so the worst tour we could ever have is a Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Why is that? Because we don't have a weekend in those 3 days. Seriously, that's it. And so for us, that is the first thing that, or the biggest thing that we want to accomplish, just learn something, try to grow, try to get better than we were yesterday. Another thing is, and it's, it goes to everything that my name is attached to, is we're going to take care of each other. And it's huge for me. I said that was huge for me before I even became an officer, because I truly believe that if I am taking care of them and if I have their back and if we create an environment that we all have each other's backs, that we're going to do the best job that we possibly can. We're going to push ourselves farther than anything else would have pushed us, just because that relationship is built. And kind of another thing is basically we're going to have fun. And yeah, that's in my mission statement as a crew. We're going to have fun.
I
I
love
want
that.
to be a part of a crew that has fun. We've got some newer stations that are big. They're just huge stations, and they're perfect places to hide. If you're a person that wants to hide, man, you literally could walk for 20 minutes trying to find somebody. It's crazy. I am lucky enough to work at the smallest, junkiest little station we have, and I love it. We all love it. And again, I'm lucky enough to work with four other people that enjoy and have been bought into what I'm trying to sell. They enjoy being around each other, and we're literally, from the time we walk in the station at 6:30 in the morning, you know, until probably at least 9, 10, 11, maybe even 12 o'clock at night, we're together. And yeah, it's a small station, so there's not a lot of hiding areas, but
Right.
we just enjoy being together. We harass each other all day long. We joke around. It's just fun, and that's what I want to achieve. And so that's really the three biggest things, and really just to all bring them together is kind of the for them mentality. But for me, it's different. I think the for them kind of gets pigeonholed into the citizens, which yeah, that's a big part of it. But for me, my for them is my crew, my citizens, and my family. And so all the stuff that we're doing, the growing, the getting better at our job, the getting along, building relationships, and enjoying our time together, they all work together towards that for them, for all of them across the board. And so
Sure.
that's about the easiest, quickest way I could sum it up.
So when you got promoted, and I was thinking about this while you were talking. So when you got promoted, did you have to move stations or shifts or crews, or did you get promoted up from, like, you were a driver and you got promoted to lieutenant on your same, you know, apparatus, or like is your crew that you're a captain the same crew that you were with as a firefighter as a lieutenant?
No, we're depending on where you're from, we're a fairly small organization. I mean, we've got 100, maybe 110 suppression people, 5 stations. And so we don't really have any hard set rules on you become an officer, you're going somewhere else. Nothing like that. It's basically you get promoted no matter what promotion it is, and you're probably going to feel the whole you are feeling.
Right.
If it's an officer at a completely different station on a completely different shift, that's probably where you're going, unless there's some other extenuating circumstances. And so our lieutenants, when I stepped into that role, our lieutenants are on our rescue, which we have one, our ladder truck, which we have one, and they ride out as a fit or an assistant helper, whatever you want to call it, to the BC.
Right.
And so that's our 3 lieutenants, and they rotate around, and so that's kind of set. So when you become a captain, you're probably going to be going somewhere else, just because that's how it's set up. But for me, I went to a place right away that I was kind of looking forward to going to, but I found out that it's a slow station. And back then, I thought that was going to be good. It was a good
Right.
crew, and I enjoyed being together. But I quickly found out that it's not for me. And lucky enough, about 6 months in, I got transferred to where I'm at right now, and I hated it back then. I was very mad that I was getting transferred. But looking back on it right now, it's like somebody's looking out for me, because again, it's just another piece of this puzzle that has put me where I'm at, because I wouldn't have met the people I've met to get me where I'm at. I wouldn't have been mentored by my driver and who I would call my best friend right now, because I wouldn't have been working with them. And it's just crazy how it all works together. But
Yeah.
I've been where I'm at right now for, I think, getting close to 3 years now. And man, it has been a process. You know, there's
I was just going to ask
anybody.
if it was like all fairy tales and pixie dust, or
Oh
like
gosh,
if you
no,
had like a bunch of.
absolutely. Oh my gosh. So just quick kind of a backstory going in this station. When I was lieutenant, you're in charge of manning, which means you put the people where they go. I could not fill overtime for this crew. If I needed a body to fill at that particular crew at that station, I couldn't get anybody to even get paid an hour, time and a half to work there. So me going there, and which was part of why I was so upset, obviously,
Right.
when I got moved. Me going there, I knew there had to be a drastic change in now. I is obviously culture, but even back then, I didn't even know what culture meant associated with, the working environment. But I knew there had to be some drastic changes in how things ran, and so yeah, it's been a collection of ups and downs for sure. It has been exhausting. It's been time consuming, draining, but to now be almost 3 years into it, and to start seeing the fruits of all that, to start seeing other crews kind of changing what they're doing because they see how good you guys are doing, that is incredible, and that makes it so worth it to me. And so that kind of keeps me going. And yeah, it's not been a fairy tale. It's not been an easy road. It's not been one of just wins. I guarantee you I have lost way more than I've won. I guarantee you I've failed more than I have succeeded. And so it is
Yeah.
what it is, and it's gotten me where I am.
And that's a really common thing that when I've talked to, and for those of you that I don't know how you know this. If you saw it on Facebook, like Brian Brush posted when I said I was back down in Oklahoma, he's like, bro, you probably ought to just move down here. Like, you're here a lot. And so I have a lot of friends that are in the OKC Metro, and a lot of people that I know that are on your department, as well as others. And it's funny because whenever I've talked to them about leadership and we've kind of compared notes, it's very similar to a lot of other places that I've gone around the country, where it's not, you can be a lieutenant and everybody's kind of used to you and they know how to handle you and you know how to handle them. But then as soon as you get promoted to captain, it's, oh man, did you see Sanders? That guy has such a big head. He can't even walk through a doorway. Like, oh, he's all hoity toity because he's a captain now. And it's like, bro, I don't know if you know this, but I literally just got promoted and nothing changed. Like, they
Yeah.
gave me a different color shield or a different color helmet, and I got a different badge, and that's it.
Yeah.
Right. And so even with me, when I had about 6 months of purgatory where I was an interim division chief of EMS or whatever the hell. The position was actually a deputy chief's position. And when I was filling in for it, I didn't get that title. It was basically just the director of the ambulance service. So whatever you want to call it, I don't care. But when I was doing that for my career department, man, I can't tell you how many people I had walk up to me and they're like, well, we're fully expecting you to just be like super cocky and like, and I sat there for a second. I'm like, okay, I've been here for a hot minute. You guys already know me. Like, what do you think's going to change?
Yeah.
And so I think there's almost this understanding or this expectation that when people get promoted or they get moved stations, there's this fear that they're going to come in and just start busting down walls and kicking people's dogs and whatever their fear is. And so it's nice to hear that when you went there, like you basically said, like, hey, there's some changes that need to be made. I'm going to figure out how to do this, but we're going to work on it together. It
Yeah.
wasn't just you walking in the station and screaming at people and saying, here's what you're going to do for me. It was, hey, how can we figure this out together?
Yeah. Yeah. And that kind of, I think what I had going in was I had a blueprint and that's it. I had no idea how to build it, but I had that mission statement that we just talked about a little bit, and I knew where I wanted to go. I knew where I wanted us to be. I had absolutely no idea how to get there, obviously, at that point, but that was kind of, and that's kind of one of the classes I do. That's kind of what we start out with is that mission statement. Because if you don't have a mission statement, you don't have a target. What are you
Right.
shooting for? How do you know if you're doing good or you're not doing good? How do you know if you're aiming in the right direction? If you don't have that to really start this all out, then you're just kind of shooting aimlessly in the night, and hopefully you're going to make it on target. And so that's where, if anybody out there is wondering what the first step is, for me, it's got to be your first step is coming up with your true mission statement of what you feel like you want to be, what you feel like your crew wants to be. And it's not just an officer thing. I think that even informal leaders, that you need to have something like that, and just to truly know what you want to just to give to the fire service and those around you.
Yeah. Well, and you bring up a great point. And I wanted to kind of segue into informal leadership. So, uh, we just taught with somebody down at the Mid America Fire Conference, and I've known this firefighter for a while. Uh, Super solid firefighter, does a great job, very knowledgeable, extremely interactive. But I asked them to be part of some of the training that we were doing, and I asked them to talk about some stuff that they were knowledgeable on. And I got a message later that night, and they were like, "Hey, I really appreciate you kind of pushing me out there to
Yeah.
make me uncomfortable." And I was like, "Okay, were you uncomfortable? Like, is that something that you weren't comfortable with?" Because to me, they did a great job. I mean, they
Yeah.
were very matter of fact. They put out a couple great nuggets, went through the props process, step 1 through step 10 or whatever, and they did a great job. And so, what I thought about after that message was the fact that as a formal leadership role, looking at an informal leadership role, it's kind of our job to find the things that people are uncomfortable with, or maybe it's not their cup of tea, and help them get comfortable with that,
Yeah.
and kind of make them. So, on the informal leadership side, I want you to kind of go through like what your view was when you were an informal leader of what your role was, and then now as a captain, how do you view the people under you, and what do you expect of them?
Yeah, man, informal leadership is big, and it's, I think, crazy enough to me now. I think the higher you go, the more you get into a formal leadership role, the more you realize that. Because if you are a station captain and you don't have any kind of informal leadership, man, it is so much more work. And it's crazy how having even just one good informal leader can really just make your improvements and make your culture, it just take it way, way beyond what you can even do by yourself. And so as a formal leader, man, I love having informal leadership, and I try my best to dig that out of people. And honestly, that's probably one of my biggest struggles throughout these past couple of years. What it's been is trying to dig deep into people's just their inner self and pull that out of them, because there's so many people out there that are exactly the person you just described. They're people that have great knowledge, great experience, great just personalities, and they're great people, but they haven't really experienced what it means to share that. They haven't truly pushed themselves outside of their comfort little area to pass any of that on. And it's a shame that so many people are like that. And that's been one of my biggest struggles in the past is I had somebody like that, and I wanted to be the person that changed that. I wanted to be the officer that 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 turned this person around and truly made them the senior firefighter that they should and could be. And unfortunately, I couldn't do it. I didn't do it, and that ended up being one of my bigger failures to this point, because it came down to a decision I had to make, and that decision was, I've taken this person as far as I can take him. I cannot do anything else for them. It's time for me to open up that seat to somebody else that needs and wants that attention and that knowledge and that growth. And so that was a tough process for me to work through. So from that perspective, it's huge. Gosh, I can't say it enough how important that informal leadership is when you are an officer or a formal leader. as far as back when I was an informal leader, I worked on some good crews. I worked on, luckily, I when I first came on, I was with some really good senior firefighters, and we had a great time and enjoyed kind of our day, kind of like what we're trying to do right now. And so I learned from them what it was like to kind of pass on what you knew, and to really make that next generation better. But in between then and now, I worked on a lot of crews that just were just here. We're just kind of show up in the morning, we run the calls we run, and we get to go home. Hopefully we get to sleep all night, and
Yeah,
that's
I got
it.
stuff
And
to do tomorrow, so I want to get a good night's sleep.
yeah, and that really it's almost like that took away from all the good that I was involved in. It kind of muddied the waters, and it kind of eroded what I had built up. And I went through a lot of struggles at home, which kind of really cemented the fact that that's who I was too. That's who I became. I just became somebody that survives another shift. And so I don't know that I ever truly took advantage of what I had when I was a firefighter. If I was just being honest, I think once I became a driver, which is our kind of our first promotion, I think once I became that role, I did a fairly good job of passing on the information and trying to make the next group better. But as a firefighter, I can't say that I was a very good passer on of information. And so yeah, it's kind of one of them things where yeah, it's the product of your environment thing, but still I was responsible for that, and I didn't do a very good job of it.
Yeah, and I think it's so you said a couple things that just kind of made me chuckle inside. So I think it is, you're right. I mean, there are people who want to learn and want to become better, and then there are people who don't. And we should always be working on the people who don't, right? But like one of the things that I have run into as recently as a month or two ago, there's a firefighter on my shift who is one of the backup drivers. So he rides up to driver if the captain's gone, the driver moves up, and I am as well, right? Like I'm checked off on it, I can drive, and so depending on the schedule, it's either him or I that get bumped up to driver. Well, he's been there longer than I have, but every time he gets bumped up to driver, he's like, "Ah, oh, man." He's like, "I really don't like driving. I don't want to drive." He's like, I really don't like pumping. It's not my cup of tea. It's not my thing." And so, in the beginning, I was like, "Oh, well, dude, I'll drive for you. Like, I love driving. Like, I love driving and pumping. I'd love to do that." And he's like, "Okay." And then he went to talk to my captain, and my captain's like, "Nah, man, it's not your day. Like, it's not. We're gonna have to move people around to make that happen."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Okay," but in my mind, I'm like, do you really want somebody who doesn't want to be doing that role in
Yeah.
that role? Or are we just trying to put a butt in the seat? And
Yeah.
so that's where, when you look at people who, and like down in the Oklahoma City area, I know that this happened before where people get put into assignments as either a punishment or just as the natural progression. And they're very
Hmm.
outspoken about the fact that they don't want to be there.
Yeah.
Well, why would you keep that person there? Why would you keep them in that spot? And so I find a lot of times the departments do that. And I've heard from firefighters all around the country of officers being promoted just on the basis of seniority or date of hire or whatever. There's a department up here in Kansas that you'll just get a phone call and they'll be like, "Hey, there's a captain's position at, squad 5." Okay, well, I guess I'm going to squad 5 tomorrow. And it's all based off of your date of hire. You never took a
That's
test.
scary.
You're right, right. And I'm like, wait a minute. So you have people that don't even want to be promoted to officers, but then why are they taking the promotion? Because they can deny it. They can say, "I don't want the promotion." Oh, well, there's a price tag on that. You get a
Oh
little
yeah.
bit of a pay raise. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Well, for an extra 10 grand or whatever it is, I'll go be a lieutenant or a captain or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that it's hard for us to have that mix of informal leaders who maybe don't want to be there. But you're right. As a captain, it is so nice to have. I have 2 lieutenants under me. I have lieutenants that can actually help me with projects and help me do stuff. And then they turn around and I get to help them with things. If their plate's full and I'm like, "Hey, don't worry about it. I'll take this or I'll do that."
Yeah.
So it's good. So what about, let me ask you your opinion on this. So When you go through your training, when you go through your process of learning how to be an officer, do you feel like there should always be a program, like an actually solidified program, whether it's going through Officer One, Officer Two, and then backing that up with, ride time as an officer, or just something interdepartmental? What process do you think people should take to be able to move up that chain?
Uh, I think there's probably obviously good you get out of these certifications. I'm not going to speak ill on anything like that, but to truly just leave it at that, I think is a huge disservice to the citizens and to yourself and to the people that you're going to be leading in the future. To me, and just a quick story of where I'm going. So the infamous COVID year last year, it was really, if I was going to be honest with everybody, it was a blessing to us as a crew, because what it did for us is the administration put in place to where every station had a driver, had a relief driver, which is kind of what you're saying is a backup. It had two paramedics and an officer. So at the very minimum, you had two people basically in every spot. I could be an officer, my driver could be an officer if I was off. The firefighter that could be a backup driver could be a driver if the driver was off. So everybody was almost interchangeable. And what that allowed us to do, and it was amazing. And I know a lot of people don't have this ability, and we don't have the ability anymore because they've changed it. But it allowed me to ride backwards as a firefighter with my driver riding out as an officer, my firefighter riding or driving in a spot that they aren't used to. So basically I am able to sit there behind him and kind of guide him through the shift. And I can't tell you, and they'll tell you the same thing. I can't tell you how much growth, and it was just an amazing process. And I don't think you can get better than that, because really the big picture is this: if I take off work, even right now, if I take off work, that driver is going to fill my spot potentially. So are we going to just let him get in that spot with absolutely no training, no knowledge, no development, nothing? Or are we going to kind of model him into what we need to be doing while I'm sitting there with him? And so one of the best days that we've had, in the past year, was we ran a fire with that crew just like that. I was a backseat firefighter. My relief driver was driving, and my driver was riding out. And to have that happen and to be able to give that experience to those people, it you can't put a price or you can't put anything on that, because it's invaluable. And just everything, going on automatic alarms, and it's a house that nobody's there. What do you do? If you're a driver that's sat in the rig your entire driving career and never really got out and experienced what you do, that's what it is. And to kind of go further than that, what you were talking about earlier about people that just get that spot as an officer where they really haven't done it. For us, we have drivers that don't want to be an officer, but they have been forced to be an
Right.
officer on days the officer takes off. And so that's not a promotion. It's not like it's something that they take, but it could literally be a driver that has been driving for years and years and years, who has never done anything leadership wise, who's never done any kind of tactical anything, and throwing them in that spot. And on top of that, somebody that doesn't want to be there. And that's bad. It's bad. It's really
Yeah.
bad. And so for me, that sums up what you're asking, is the ability to have that experience in almost as controlled environment as you could possibly have it. You're getting that experience with those people that you're learning from and being mentored from right there next to you. I don't think it gets any better than that. And that's what we need. We need to be passing those things off in person, right there in live environments. And that's about as best I can answer that. And luckily enough, I've experienced that in person and seen the benefit from that.
Dude, I've been trying to bite my tongue this entire time that you've been talking because I'm like, man, I don't want to interrupt him, but holy crap, dude! Like, I can't agree with you more. Like,
Yeah.
I can't find anything to fault in that statement. And you know, I've talked about it on other shows with me personally. I've been doing that for a while as a captain, where I'll show up at the station if it's on the volunteer side. I'll roll into the station and I got a dude that normally drives, and I'll be like, "Hey, dude, I'll drive you. You ride the seat." And we'll talk about stuff, and I let them make decisions, and I watch how they're doing it. Because essentially all of our people that can drive are usually either already lieutenant or going to be promoted to lieutenant. So, it really does open up that ability for them to get that real world experience. And even if it's just, from captain to captain, even if it's just me or you popping between the two seats and being like, "Hey, bro, don't forget to give a size up." Oh yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
engine 17's on scene. I got 2-story single family, and then after, if they don't do it the way you want it to, or if they don't do it the way you want them to, you can critique that. When you get back to the station, you can say, "Hey, I loved your size up. However, here's
Yeah.
some other things that you might want to say." And I feel like there's so many times I equate a lot of the stuff in the fire service to. I try not to use the military because there are some comparisons, but the more that I've talked to veterans, they're like,
Yes.
"Dude, it's totally different."
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I actually use the airline industry a lot, and when we're talking about the training realm, but this is applicable as well. When you have a airliner that's flying from point A to point B, you have a captain and a first officer. That first officer is going to get the experience of being in the captain's role because they have to be. What happens if something happens to the captain? What if the captain has
Yeah.
to go take a dump? Whatever it is, that first officer is going to essentially take over that spot, and then eventually they're going to move up and get promoted to captain. But there are so many times where I've talked to pilots on the commercial side where they're like, "Oh yeah, we'd be flying," and all of a sudden the captain would just be like, "Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and step back, and you're going to go ahead and take over for the flight."
Yeah.
Now, there's autopilot and there's some other things. It's not, spoiler alert, it's not like it used to be where you actually have to fly the plane, but there's a lot of checks that have to be done. There's things that have to be monitored and maintained. And so, what better way to get that experience to have somebody sitting next to you and say, "Hey,
Absolutely.
think about this, think about that." So, I love that. And I'll go one step further. I would like to see, for some of our smaller agencies around, I'd like to see them having the opportunity to go do that with other larger departments. It doesn't always mean that they're better, but they just see more work. And
Yeah.
so, I know of some places around the country, not in the Midwest, but I know places around the country where if it's a county-wide organization or a county-wide interoperable kind of situation, they'll take officers from slower areas and move them for a shift or two, just so that they can ride out and get that experience.
Yeah.
And I know that there's some lines and there's political bullshit that you have to get through. But why are we not doing that? Because you have
Yeah.
departments that run, a couple thousand calls a year next to major metropolitan departments that run multiple fires a day.
Yeah.
So what better place for them to get that experience? So you touched on this earlier, and it kind of brings me to my next point. What training is out there for those people if they're not able to do it within their own organization? They're not able to go ride out with a larger organization. Where do you feel like is a good place for people to go get that leadership training, whether they're informal or formal?
Man, I mean, to start with it, I've heard you say it over and over again. I know you talked with on the fire engineering networking for success a lot about it. And you gotta make sure you're kind of vetting these places you're going to. But there's a lot, and it starts by going kind of outside and digging into it. One of the kind of the first people that I really attached myself to, as far as just, man, this guy is talking about things that are in my head, is Benjamin Martin.
Mm-hmm.
Guy is ridiculously smart, as far as just kind of almost a psychology type approach to officers and formal leadership and dealing with people and all those things. And that is one of the biggest problems, or that's one of the biggest topics that we're talking about that's missing. Nobody talks about how to deal with people. Okay, yeah, you go get a officer one, and you learn how to to give a size up and a little bit about building construction and whatever else. But how do I go in to the firehouse today and deal with this senior firefighter not doing what I ask him to do because he's not had to do it for the past 10 years under somebody else? I don't know, because nobody's ever told me anything about that.
Right. There's no magic playbook for that.
How do you go into a firehouse for the first time that is drastically below standard and completely gut it and create something great from the ground up? How do you do that? Nobody talks about it. And so, I can't sit here and just give you specific kind of classes and people, but I mean, even just at the Mid-America Fools Conference that we were just at a few days ago, there were some good classes there. And I wouldn't just pin myself down to anything. And I definitely wouldn't pin myself down to the bigger conferences or the more heard about conferences. There's some great things going on at the kind of the smaller level right now, all over the place, all the time. And I think just kind of reaching out and figuring out who has a message that lines up to where you're headed. And that's kind of where it goes back to that mission for me. It's that kind of person that I really started to look for and try to really start following. And social media it's a goofy thing. It can be great, it can be bad. For me, it's pretty much all great, because I don't spend any time on negative stuff. I don't care. I don't have the time to deal with anything negative. So if I'm looking at it or reading it or commenting on it, it's because there's something positive to it. I tune out everything else. And so that's been a way to really kind of focus on, man, I like what they said right there. That's probably somebody I want to follow. And good grief, got the dogs barking in the back. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
But that's kind of where it started.
Man.
Oh yeah. But that's kind of where I started, and where I've kind of built out from is just kind of keeping my eyes open and seeing what is posted, seeing what people are putting out there, seeing articles, hearing what people are saying about classes they took. And so it's kind of where I've blossomed out from, I guess, if you want to call it that, from in that area.
Well, and it's funny because I don't even know if you know this, but one of the things that I took from you early on when I got to know you, we kind of had that same discussion. I don't know if you remember, but we were talking about social media and, trolls and just stuff like that. And you're like, man, I don't even spend any time with it. And I'm one of those people where, for those of you that don't know me, I take everything super personally. Like, I take everything super personally. So like if somebody gets on there and they're like, oh, that's stupid, I'm like, oh my God, I should delete this, or, oh, whatever. And so it is hard, because you want to put stuff out there that's helpful for someone. And I've made this comment multiple times. I don't care if 10,000 people learn from me or if one person learns from me. That's my thing. Right. And so I would love for 10,000 people to learn, but that's not the main goal. And so when we talk about social media and the way that people go out there, there is some really great information. But one of the things that I learned from you was just to, there's so many times where I'm starting to post a comment on something that's really like they're bashing someone. And I'm like, do you really think that's, something that you need to be doing? Or do you really think that this is helpful? Yeah. And then I just stop and I'm like, I'm not going to feed into this. Like, I'm just going to stop. I'm going to leave it alone. And it's cool to watch, because as you start seeing people, some that you know, some that you don't know, people start getting on there and they'll say the exact same thing. Right. And so instead of me posting this super negative, angry comment, there are other people who maybe can handle it a little bit more eloquently. Yeah. But one of the things that I wanted to get your opinion on this, because I got told probably 10 or 15 years ago by a good friend of mine. He said, hey man, don't always just focus on the fire service side of training. Go and get some leadership training outside of the fire service. And at the time I was like, man, what is he talking about? Like, what did you want me to go to, like a cop conference or something? And he was like, no. He's like, go look up leadership for corporations, and go look up organizational leadership type classes. And so I think it's really cool because when I started doing that, it started opening up my eyes to what all the rest of the communities and other professions are doing.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've been really vocal on is education. And for those that have not heard me say this, I'm sorry if you don't agree. That's cool. We can still like each other at the end of this. Um, but I grew up in the era at the very tail end of you got promoted based on performance, merit, experience, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it was being replaced with you had to go get a bachelor's, master's, doctorate, whatever. And so now it's really cool to be able to see it kind of come full circle where we've always put so much emphasis on education, but now they're starting to figure out both through research and empirically that you can have a master's degree and still be an idiot and
Oh
not
yeah.
know how to do your job.
Yeah.
You can have an associate's degree and still be an idiot or be super good at your job. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And so I'm starting to see it, but that was something that corporations and the not public safety agencies have started. I mean, they started doing that like probably 7 or 8 years ago was when it really kind of took off. And so now, look at Google, look at Apple, look at Tesla. There are all these major corporations that are doing some really amazing things. And a lot of it is based around can this person actually do their job? One of my favorite stories is like SpaceX. They have people that work for SpaceX that don't have a formal education, but they're really, really good at what they do. And so
Yeah.
they wanted those people. And so we're starting to see that in the fire service. But how much education do you feel is important? And how much do you feel just kind of becomes paper on a wall?
Uh, that that question, man, I don't know how to truly answer that. And I know a lot of super super smart people, the whole book smart people that I would never want to work with and definitely not for. And I know a lot of amazing people that I would trust with my life any day, any second, that you would never see them reading or anything, just not very book smart people. So to me, I don't put a lot into that. And that's, I don't know. I think that's just kind of personally me because I was not a great student, never a great student. I went to college to play baseball. I did not go to college for anything else. And so that's maybe just me, but seeing it and seeing this is a blue collar job. I'm sorry. It is. And when you start raising up the white collarness in people and promoting them higher up, I'm having trouble with that. I will just say that because I feel like we're losing a lot of good leaders because they aren't good test takers. I'll, I'm just going to say that
Yeah,
I
I
feel
agree.
that, and I see it a lot. And so to me, I don't put a lot into that. And to kind of go into what you were talking about earlier, that's kind of where I started too. For those that don't know me, I actually live in the Tulsa area, and so I've got right at 100 miles to the station. And when I first moved out here, that was music, and I love music and listen to all kinds of music. But once I kind of have been on this journey in the past couple of years, that has been a time of growth. I've been able to take that hour and a half in the mornings and capture completely wasted time and turn it into growth. And where that started was not fire department podcast. It was just regular leadership podcast. I didn't even know there was such thing as fire department podcast when I started listening.
Right.
I listened to a couple of my favorites starting out was Entree Leadership. That's kind of a Dave Ramsey podcast, and Craig Groeschel's Leadership podcast. If you haven't heard of those, man, look those up. They're great, awesome podcast. And then I kind of started figuring out that there's actually fire service stuff, and so man, I've got a gigantic library right now. But another thing that I like to do is listen to audiobooks, and some of my favorite audiobooks are nothing to do with fire service. And just to plug them real quick is two of them that I've listened to just in the past months that I love, and I can't say it enough, is the first one is Turn Your Ship Around by, no, I'm sorry. It's Your Ship by, I'm trying to get his name right, Michael Abrashoff. So he is a basically a lieutenant or a admiral in the Navy, and he talks about taking the worst ship in the fleet and turning it into the best ship. And there were so many things that lined up with who I want to be and who I want to help others be. It's an amazing book, and so I love that. And another one, I just mentioned him in his podcast, but is Craig Rochelle's book, and it's called Winning the War in Your Mind. And that's a great one to really dig. He digs into a little bit of kind of physiology of how the brain works and things like that, but just kind of overcoming some limitations that we put on ourselves. And but yeah, I mean, that's, if you're just kind of pinning yourself in any area, I don't care if it's just this type of book or this type of podcast, you're missing out on something. So yeah, really branching out and getting into, a little bit of more well-rounded approach. But what I just said kind of goes to where you said, if you have those times where it's just kind of wasted time, if you're not getting any good out of it, okay, yeah, some days I listen to music on the way home still. I'm just in that kind of mentality.
Sure.
But to truly grab onto that wasted time and make it into something positive, that has been a huge blessing in my life. And so I'll just kind of another tip that I'll throw out there to anybody that has even a 20-30 minute kind of commute to work. Take that time and use it for growth and use it for something that is going to benefit you and the others around you.
Yeah, and that's so you bring up a really good point. It was actually something that kind of changed how I was doing stuff. When I first started doing podcasts, I would put everything on YouTube, and it was all video stuff. Like for those of you that are watching it on the YouTube side, you're seeing us. For those of you that are listening to it, you can't see us, but I had people reach out and they're like, "Hey man, I love listening to your stuff when I'm on my way to work. I have like a 45-minute drive or an hour drive, whatever it is, but I can't watch it on YouTube because it keeps cutting off, or when I'm working out." And so I was like, "Oh, I guess I should probably post it in two different places." And so I had no idea what the hell I was doing. And I think you were kind of in the same spot when you started. You were like, "Man, I don't know how to do any of this stuff." But yeah, it's so cool how like now, my wife goes to bed fairly early after the boys are put to bed. And so once we settle down and watch the news, and we're old now, so she'll pass out. Well, I usually stay up till like 11:30 midnight on my own every night, whether I'm on shift or not. And so after she falls asleep, I'll just put on my headphones and I'll just listen to a couple podcasts. And there's so many things that I've learned that are just little nuggets that you pick up. So I love that. But so when you talk about, and you briefly touched on it as far as where you're going and where you're headed, I know you offer a couple different classes. I want you to talk about, where you are now and where you want to be as an instructor, because I think there's two sides to that, right? Like you've done all this stuff that has built these classes because of the leader that you are. But where do you want to go as an instructor?
Well, first off, I'll get back right into kind of what I've touched on so far. It's stepping back and looking at what is going on right now and thinking of what I would have thought about me being here years ago. I think I would be completely amazed and unbelieving and where things have gone. And me saying that, please don't think that I'm making myself anything particular. It's just who I have always been all my life is not somebody that would have led to this point. For me, I have always been somebody that has been deathly afraid of public speaking. I've hated and been scared of it all my life. But now I'm somebody who is looking through social media posts, trying to see who the next call for presenters is. And so I can, put in a proposal for it. It's crazy. I don't, I don't understand it.
Right.
But so for me last year at this time, we were doing the first Mid-America Fools Conference. I didn't speak there because I didn't speak till this year for the first time, but I was assisting in their hands-on. I was kind of in charge of the forcible entry area. And so, literally, the morning before we met on that Saturday to do the hands on thing and get prepared, I had to stop in a parking lot and just make sure I wasn't going to get freaking sick to my stomach because I was so freaking nervous. I mean, that's the truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's just interesting. But so, kind of fast forward a few months, I mentioned my driver, and I don't care if people get tired of hearing it or not. Justin Mann is my driver. He teaches and instructs all over the nation. He's an amazing firefighter and just an amazing person.
And
I can't say it
he's
enough.
super dreamy. I'm just saying.
Yes, exactly. Got that salt and pepper,
Yeah.
kind of like you there. But but he has got an amazing ability of pushing somebody in a direction that they need to be going without them knowing it. And that's what he did to me. I don't know how he's gotten me to this point, but he brought up an idea to teach a class at Lake of the Ozarks with me to do it together. And at that time, I've never even thought about doing anything like that. And I was like, well, okay, he wants to do it. I'm not going to say no. I want to step out. I want to take that step. So let's go. And so that's kind of what started that portion of all this. And of course, the Corley Moore started the Honor of the Fallen conference in, I believe it was June. And I was
Hmm.
lucky enough to be asked for that. And that actually was my first time. And so that one, the Lake one, and this Fools conference that we just did, that's the only times I've ever spoke. Just I the past 4 or 5 months have been the my speaking career. That wraps it up right
Yeah.
there. And so I was, talking to my wife after my little presentation on Friday, and he asked me how it went. I felt like it went pretty good for being the first time teaching that particular one. And I just told her, just have a lot of work to do. And she said, "What do you mean by that?" And I feel like I want to be more comfortable doing it. I want to be able to be so comfortable that I can just add in some humor and just kind of make it lighthearted sometimes, and still pass on that message that I have. And so I have a long way to go. I mean, obviously you're just starting out, but something I really like to pass on is that when I'm speaking, at least, is all presenters, all speakers, they want to be heard. They want you to leave with their objectives and their message. They want to keep your attention. All obviously that's what instructors want. I want to take it another level. I want to push myself to a little bit higher of a standard for myself. And then that is, I want people to feel what I am saying. I want them to feel my message, because what I talk, it's not something that I have to rehearse. It's not something that I have to kind of look at a script and memorize. I basically put a PowerPoint together with kind of my key things that to help me stay on track. And I just go off of that because it's stuff inside. It's passions inside. It's things that I have learned and dealt with and experiences and things like that. It's stuff that I truly feel inside of me that I want to share with others. And so I want to be able to pass that on to them like that. I want them to not only hear me, but I want them to feel the love and the passion that I have for the things I talk about. And so those are things that I'm definitely wanting to work at, and hopefully kind of keep this thing going, and build off of it, and just get better. And I really enjoy forcible entry. I I enjoy kind of teaching that, but this weekend really kind of showed me that, man, I really love passing on engine work knowledge and
Yeah.
instructing that. This weekend was kind of the first time I've been truly hands on into that area, and it just made me feel like I want to do that more too. And so, you know, I think the key is you find areas that you love, that interest you, that you are passionate about, and you really start to dig into those and figure out ways of helping others in those areas. And that's kind of where I'm starting to really kind of aim myself towards.
Dude, I love it, man. Well, and you So I've known you, and this is weird because I've known you long enough that like I already knew some of the stuff that you were talking about just because of your personality and like being nervous and pulling over in the parking lot and wanting to throw up and stuff like that. But it's funny because as whether you're a leader or an educator or both, I think that there's a lot of things that go hand in hand. And so, for me, I think Justin and you and a couple other people at some point have taken my class or done something that I've taught. And they're like, man, you're like super excited about this and you're doing this. I'm like, yeah, the whole time I'm trying not to throw up. Like I'm nervous, I'm always nervous.
Yep.
And so there are times where, I've showed up and I've walked into a classroom and it's wall to wall people, standing room only. And if I try to hide it as much as I can, but like I'll go over and I'll pretend like I'm doing something on my computer that's important, but the whole time I'm like, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit, And so when I start talking, every class that I do for the first 30 seconds to a minute, it's a little chaotic. It's a little, I might
Yep.
do my little bio thing and I maybe misspeak something or what. There's always something, right? There are
Yep.
very few people that I've ever taken a class from that can walk in and just 100% legit not be nervous at all. I think
Yep.
everybody feels that. And so I love that about you. And I love that about all the other people that we surround ourselves with. Um, we're not above that. We're not above
Oh
being
no.
nervous. And so, yeah, I think that it's awesome that you want to continue to do that. I did not realize because you've been doing the podcast thing for a while.
Yeah, I think I started. It was early 2020, kind of when I started it.
Yeah.
So
And so I didn't realize that you had only taught those classes a few times. Like I thought that you had, just because of the podcasting stuff. Do
yeah.
you feel like it's a majority of the stuff that you talk about in your classes is what you've discussed in your podcasts? Or do you feel like it's completely separate things?
No, I would say that everything I talk about, no matter where I'm at, is that stuff. It's stuff like I just kind of mentioned. It's stuff that I've either lived through and have either learned because I failed at it, or learned because over and over again we finally figured out, okay, this works, or just something that we've done through experience. And that's who I am. I'm not, I'm not a tactics guy. I'm not a big picture guy or command guy. I'm just not. Does that mean I'm not competent in my skills in those areas? Absolutely not. But that's not who I am, and that wouldn't be the message that I truly want to pass on to others, because I'm just not into all that as much as I am this. And so
Sure.
this stuff, it just kind of comes out, and in the podcasting, that's, I would have something that was on me that I felt that I really wanted to pass on, and that's what I talked about. And so it kind of, it's a collection of things that are really the same, but it's just kind of evolving over time, I would say.
Yeah. No, I agree. Okay, so we're wrapping up. We got about we're at an hour and 15. So I want to ask you this question, and then I'm going to kind of give you the floor after that because I want you to give some final words. But um, if you could go back and talk to your like first year Jeremy, you know what I mean? If you could go back in time and sit at the table with that glorious mustache, uh, what would you tell yourself at the beginning of your career now that you are where you're at?
Man, hold on. Gosh, that's it. Because I, I have been through some stuff, and that goes in my career as a firefighter, and that goes in my home life. It's crazy to think of the past 19 years, all that has happened, and what I've lived through, what my family has lived through. Uh, but to be honest, and I was listening to a podcast just the other day. I can't even remember which one it was and who it was, but they asked the question of, if you could go back in time and change one thing, what would it be? And I sat there and truly thought for a while what my answer to that would be. And I know it may be cliche to say, but I don't think I could change anything, because even the bad stuff, even the things that I didn't know if we were going to make it through. Even the times that I hated coming to work, all of it, those have made me who I am today. And those have made me, the person that truly wants to be better at work as well as at home every day. That's what made it possible. And so I I wouldn't change anything. I would just say that this career is going to be hard. Your life is going to be hard from this point on. To find that balance, that you're not only putting time and focus into becoming a better firefighter and leader at work, but also save enough of yourself, enough of your time, enough of your energy to become a better person at home, a better husband, wife, mother, father, whatever it is that you are at home, that you're saving enough of yourself that you're becoming better at home as well. Because this job, like everybody says, it's the best job in the world, and that we're blessed to have this job. But the bad thing is that it's so fun and that it's so consuming that we can allow it to take over everything. We can allow it to suck the life out of relationships and everything else if we let it. And so really focus on maintaining that balance and really focus on surviving the lows, because you are going to have lows. I don't care how long you're in the fire service, especially if you're approaching 15, 20, 30 years, you're going to have an incredible amount of highs and lows. And so just live through those. Just figure out what you can learn from everyone. The good ones, the bad ones, like you talked about earlier, and just keep going, man. I said hang on to when I started, but that's it, man. The things that we go, and it's funny. I'll say this, one of my firefighters, and I don't honestly know how much he's joking when he says it, but every day since he said it for the first time that I heard, it really makes me wonder how true it is. But he says that it's not the traumatic calls that we go on that force people out of this job for PTSD. It's the running on nonsense nonstop. It's
Yeah.
5 times a night, things like that. That's what causes PTSD. And I'm sitting there thinking, gosh dang, you know what? I think we ran 14 calls yesterday. We had 4 overnight. We've ran 4 the past 2 shifts overnight. It wears on you. I love being able to run calls, but you can't help it that it just wears on you. And so, yeah, that's what I would say is learn what you can from everybody that you can learn it from. Keep pushing forward. You're on a path that you have no control over. So take the best out of it and keep pushing forward.
Yeah. And God, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, man. And I think the one catalyst that I want to add to that too, and you and I have had this discussion, when you're having those problems at work or at home or in your personal life or in your professional life, it's the people that you surround yourself with who are going to make the difference. I know, even though you and I have never worked a shift together, I can pick up the phone and call you and be like, "Hey, bro, you got a second? Can I run this by you?" Or, "Hey, man, I really need to talk to somebody."
Yeah.
And you'll be there, right? And so even within my crew, uh, I've spoken pretty extensively about this in the past. Like when COVID first hit, I lost my shit, dude. I was not, I
Yeah.
was not digging it, right? I mean, they're
Oh
like,
yeah.
"Hey, we're shutting down the country," and I'm like, "Wait, what?"
Yeah.
And so
Exactly.
I went off the deep end for a hot second, and my crew noticed some difference in me, and so they came to me and they're like, "Hey, man, we're really worried about you. Like, are you okay?" And at first I was like, "Yeah, no, I'm good." And they're like, "Okay, you haven't talked, and it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and you haven't said a single word since you got here this morning, and that's not like you."
Oh yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I think that there is some very big truths to that. And one thing that my wife always says, um, which gosh, she's a saint because your wife's probably a saint too because she has to put up with you. But
Oh yeah.
uh, my wife told me a long time ago that I'm not the same person that she met 20 years ago. I'm just not the same person. And when I got kind of offended by that, I was like, well, what do you mean I'm not the same person? Like I'm funny. I'm I go out, I like to have a good time. And she goes, no, you're just, I find you like, I'll walk into the room and you're just kind of like staring out the window. And she's like, I can usually tell when you've had a bad day or a bad couple shifts.
Yeah.
You're just not the same person. And so, yeah, I think we all have to manage that. And unfortunately, at this point, kind of like we talked about in the very beginning of this podcast, not only in a job that can kill you, we're also being attacked from all the different angles from our own administration, the city management, the public. Um, and so that makes it even harder. And we're
Yeah.
starting to see the effects of that. So I love that. I wish at some point we could teleport back and meet each other's younger selves. I think that would be hilarious. Um, but no, so I want to turn it over to you for any last thoughts. What else would you like to talk to or tell the listeners that you want to leave them with?
Just to kind of keep going from where you just left off there is, these are interesting and difficult times for everybody, but I think specifically in the fire service as well, and even more specifically in crews that truly want to be better and want to really take this service to the next level, because there are so many negative things going on. There's so many just one thing that has truly, I struggled in the COVID year as well. We struggled as a crew as well. We had several times where we had to sit down at the table and basically reboot and try our best to start over, because we were allowing those negative things to kind of suck the life out of us. And so that's kind of where I want to head, is you've got to really purge that negativity and distance yourself as best as you can from it, because at the end of the day, most of the things we get upset about, most of the things that we sit there and vent about and go on and on about, we have no control over. Absolutely no control over. So does that make it better? No, it doesn't make it any better. We still got to live through it. But why would we sit there and let something ruin our day that we cannot control? And so that's been something that I've had to constantly kind of refocus myself on over and over and over again, because it's so easy to get sucked into the current gossip and the current, oh look, we got this coming out now, look at this procedure, or this piece of equipment is we've been asking for and nobody's giving it to, blah 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 blah. I mean, it could go on and on and on. But what can we do about it? Can we do anything about it? Can we? Yes. Okay, then let's do it. We can't. Okay, well then I'll give you 5 minutes. Let's vent about it. Let's sit here and get it all out. Then we're going to get up and we're going to go do something to completely get our mind off of it. We're going to do something to get better. We're going to do something to grow. We're going to do something to have fun. And then we're going to move on and go about our day just like we would any other day, because we cannot control those things. So we will not allow them to ruin what we have going on. And so that's been a huge lesson. I wouldn't say that I've learned. It's a huge lesson that I have to learn every day, and it's a huge lesson that I try to help my crew learn every day, because it's a fight every single day. And so that's the biggest thing I want to pass on beyond what we've talked about, is stay positive. Don't let the negativity sink in. Don't let yourself get bogged down in the stuff that doesn't have anything to do with your decision making abilities. If you can't change it, then move on and work on the things you can change. Work on that small circle and do the best you can in the area that you can do good in. So
I love it,
that's
man.
about it, man.
I love it. So how can people get a hold of you? So you have the Crew First culture.
So Crew First Culture, it's we got Instagram, Facebook. So anytime you can direct message me on those. I have a website now that I spent way too much time trying to create. It's crewfirstculture.com, and that's a 1ST. And so you can look me up on that. There's actually phone number even on that website if you want to ever contact me through that. But that's the best way kind of to do it quickly. If you have something you want to email me through, it's crewfirstculture@yahoo.com. but I'm not the best email person. I don't keep up with emails as good as I should. So I'll just say that that's probably not the best way to do it. But anywhere, those places, I've got a YouTube channel as well that obviously that, got some things on there if you're wanting to look at, or
But are
the
you on
podcast if you're
TikTok?
wanting to check on. I have an account just because my kids used to do it, but I have never posted anything and never have an interest in posting anything on. I'll say that.
That I didn't either, man, but that's where it's at. Like I posted something on
I
TikTok the other
can't
day. It
do
was
it.
like a 15-second clip and it got like 6,000 views. I haven't gotten that on Facebook ever.
How long did you practice the dance before you recorded it though?
So that'll never happen. I can tell you that. That and me running around on the training ground in my underwear are never going to be on TikTok. I'm just throwing it out there. But no, that's cool, man. I would implore people to get a hold of you. I know you have talked about some amazing things, and I'm really excited to see where it goes from here. You have the coolest swag, you have the coolest, social media content. So it's cool, man. And I'm excited to see where it
Appreciate that.
goes. And I can't thank you enough for being on the show. So
Thank you.
just a couple things for the viewers and the listeners. We are going to be up in Nebraska on November 13th. We're doing a short-staffed operations class. So for those of you that have not heard of Osceola, Nebraska, it's this diamond in the rough. They have a really, really cool training center. It was all built by people on the department, engineers, firefighters, people that have no idea how to do anything except for put in a tack weld. They built this thing. And it's like a 4-story with a roof prop, and it's pretty amazing. So we're going to be up there in central Nebraska. We're getting into that market. We have a lot of different departments that have reached out. We're also going to be at FDIC again. So if you didn't see the post out there, come join us. We're going to be doing a class talking about transitional search, which if you don't know what that is, I'll give you a little nugget. It is not like the transitional fire attack. We're going to talk about the different ways in which we search, where it's applicable, and how to kind of change it mid operation if you need to. So I want to thank everybody for listening. I want to thank Jeremy for taking time out of his day to jump in with us. And we're going to go ahead and sign off. But you guys take care, be safe, and we'll talk to you soon.
See you guys.